2. The open house. Setting: suburban neighborhood. Couple flips houses together for a living. Suspicion spark: she keeps suggesting solo site visits and swears the empty house is too dusty for guests. Discovery: he stages a buyer appointment and arrives to find wine glasses and a fresh charcuterie board, not construction gear. Revenge plus twist: he hosts a public open house event with a fake real estate team, installs photo collages of her and the other guy across each room, and wires the bathroom mirror with a looping confession. Twist: the man is actually their project investor, who never knew she was married. Some people say love is built on trust. In my case, it was built on drywall dust and Zillow listings. My wife, Claire, and I had been flipping houses for nearly 8 years. We were the perfect team on paper. She was the visionary who walked into crumbling kitchens and saw quartz countertops and exposed beams. I was the guy who knew how to make her dreams code compliant. She'd sketch it, I'd build it. Simple. We made a name for ourselves, mostly in mid-tier suburbs where old money was dying off and young tech couples were moving in. The kind of neighborhoods where a coat of paint and a power wash driveway could net you $80,000 in margin. Our marriage, our business, everything was always under construction. We liked it that way. But then came the house on Ellis Lane, property number 41 in our portfolio. The Tudor-style two-story with red brick chimney and black iron sconces. Claire had loved it instantly. It's got character, she'd said, running her fingers over the vine-covered archway like she was reading Braille. I hadn't argued. The comps were solid, and the bones were strong. But Claire insisted on managing this one more personally. I'll head over solo today, she said that Thursday morning. Too dusty for buyers. No point in you getting in the way. The hell does that mean? I laughed. I mean, I'm meeting with the contractor. You don't like him anyway, right? True. I didn't. Some new guy she'd brought in from a supposed referral. Name was Brett or Brent or Brad, something smirky like that. Looked like he lifted weights just to fill out polo shirts. He seems green, I said, keeping it mild. He's not, she said, tying her hair back. He just knows how to dress. I'd been building since I was 19. Dressing, well, had never been part of the blueprint. Still, I let it go. Marriage is half compromises, half ignoring things you don't want to pick at. But this started to fester. Claire's solo site visits became a weekly ritual. Thursdays, then Mondays, then some Sundays, too. Always quick to leave. Never quick to answer texts. And each time she came back from Ellis Lane, she had that post-project glow, a smile stretched just a bit too tight, like the tension was holding her together. I noticed little things. Once, she came home without her engagement ring. Took it off to grout tile, she said. Another time, her shirt had a wine stain. Paint spill, she claimed. Still, I didn't press. Not yet. But the final straw? That came when I stopped by unannounced on a Wednesday. Said I left a tape measure in the upstairs closet. She didn't know I was coming. The place was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. No hammering, no saws. But a faint smell of rosemary and garlic drifted through the air. I followed it. Right to the kitchen island, where a charcuterie board sat neatly arranged. Prosciutto, brie, grapes, olives. 2 empty wine glasses beside it. No one in sight. No tools either. Just one of Claire's silk scarves on the counter. The navy one with tiny golden stars. The one she said she lost at yoga. I left without touching anything. No note. No confrontation. Just a hollow feeling in my chest, and a plan starting to form in the back of my mind. That night, I didn't ask her where she'd been. She offered nothing. Just slipped into bed and kissed my shoulder like everything was fine. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the days since Ellis Lane began. Counting the cracks in our marriage. I knew one thing for sure. If this was an affair, it wasn't just betrayal. It was business. Claire and I weren't just husband and wife. We were co-owners, equal partners. Which meant whoever this guy was, the wine-drinking, charcuterie-loving contractor, he was eating off my plate. And I was about to return the favor. I didn't confront her. Not then. Not when it would have been easy. Because that's the mistake most men make. They react. Me? I renovate. I rebuild things stronger, even when I'm burning them down in the process. The next morning, Claire left early again. Claimed she had to meet with an electrician at the house on Ellis. I nodded, said nothing. She smiled like she still had me fooled. She didn't notice the small Bluetooth tracker I slipped into her purse as she sipped her oat milk latte. Didn't feel it press against the fabric beneath her planner and spare mascara tube. I tracked her from my phone. She was at Ellis Lane for 6 hours. Not the supply store. Not the staging company. Not the flooring showroom. Just the house. Alone? Doubtful. I waited until Friday. Then Saturday. I watched her dress more carefully for each site visit. I watched her check her reflection in the mirror one too many times before she left. On Monday, I made my move. Hey, I said casually over breakfast, buttering toast like nothing was unraveling beneath the surface. I think we should do a feature day for the Ellis Lane property. Open house, maybe a local photo walk. Invite some agents. Drum up buzz. Claire paused mid-sip. It's not ready. Almost is. There's still finish work to do. That's what staging hides, I replied with a shrug. We've done more with less. She hesitated. I saw the flicker, a calculation happening behind her eyes. If we wait too long, I added, we'll miss peak interest. The holidays are around the corner. You know how people slow down. She nodded, still guarded. Just keep it small. Of course. I meant to keep it surgical. That night, while she was working late, I drove to Ellis Lane and let myself in with the spare contractor's key I'd cloned from her purse 2 weeks ago. The place was spotless, staged beautifully. The walls were painted in Claire's signature warm neutrals, oat sugar in the living room, dove almond in the hallways, fresh eucalyptus in vases, faux fur throws folded just so across tufted velvet benches. And on the kitchen counter, a bottle of Pinot Noir, not even opened, just waiting. I stepped through each room, taking mental inventory, not of the finishes or decor, but of the corners they liked, the space they used, the scenes they played out while I worked late building the next foundation. I imagined them against the quartz counters, his fingers on her hips, her laughter, that fake, performative thing she used when trying to sound younger. I didn't rage. I planned, and I photographed everything, not just the rooms, the shadows, the wine ring on the coasters, the spare men's hoodie tossed behind the linen closet door, the one that definitely wasn't mine. Then, I got to work. Over the next 3 days, I transformed that house, not with hammer and nails, but with evidence. I installed 24 by 36 foam boards, one in every room. Each board displayed a carefully crafted collage of photos, some from our home security footage. She never realized our Nest Cam faced the driveway, some taken from her iCloud, which I'd quietly synced to a burner laptop the moment I suspected. I printed texts, cropped screenshots, took time-stamped photos of receipts and calendar logs. Her own entries betrayed her more than any spy could. Each board had a theme. The bedroom, midnight meetings. The kitchen, recipe for deceit. The living room, Netflix and lies. At the center of it all was the bathroom mirror. I removed the mirror backing and replaced it with a flat panel screen, connected to a motion sensor. Anytime someone walked in, it would loop a recording I'd extracted from a voice memo off her phone. One she'd sent to B, which I now knew stood for Brady, not Brad or Brett. In the memo, she whispered, I don't think he suspects anything. He still calls me babe. You're the only one who actually sees me. There was a pause, then. You're my real home. I just have to get through this listing, and we're free. She had no idea what was coming. When I announced the open house on Facebook and Nextdoor, I listed it under a fake firm, Unity Residential Group. The irony wasn't lost on me. I invited our realtor contacts, the HOA board, some investors we'd worked with, even our neighbors, all under the guise of exclusive first look. She didn't even question it when I told her I'd take care of setup. Said she had a doctor's appointment that morning. Would meet me there later. Of course she would. I spent the morning hanging the final boards. I stocked the wine rack with the same bottles they'd been drinking. And in the hallway, I placed the finishing touch. A large printed sign above the console table. Honesty adds value. Underneath it, I laid out neatly labeled folders. Exhibit A, GPS logs. Exhibit B, text transcripts. Exhibit C, photographic comparisons. Each folder was color-coded. Each one held receipts, confirmations, appointment records, Venmo screenshots, all cross-referenced. Claire wasn't just cheating. She was building her next home on my blueprints. And I was about to list it for everyone to see. It was a crisp Saturday morning when I turned the key to Ellis Lane one final time. The air smelled faintly of lavender plugins and betrayal. I left the front door unlocked. That wasn't a mistake. I wanted people to walk in. At precisely 11 a.m., I pulled the open house today, sign out of the back of my truck and stabbed it into the front lawn. The foam core arrows pointed toward the entrance, decorated with Claire's usual minimalist aesthetic. White chalk text on a navy blue background, lowercase letters, just like she liked. I propped open the door. Cue the show. 11:08 a.m. The first to arrive were two elderly neighbors from 3 doors down, Mr. and Mrs. Calhoun. They knew Claire as the sweet girl with the golden retriever and had once invited us over for ribs. They stepped in, smiling. "Always curious what you two are working on," Mr. Calhoun said, tipping his cap. I gestured toward the living room. "Please, make yourselves at home." They walked inside and stopped. I saw Mrs. Calhoun's eyes catch the first photo board. She blinked, then leaned in. A frown creased her forehead. Mr. Calhoun tilted his head. "Is that Claire?" It was. Claire and Brady, arms wrapped around each other at night in front of the fireplace. The timestamp said 11:46 p.m., the night she told me she was staying late at the storage unit to organize invoices. The next photo, Brady kissing her hand in our flipped kitchen, the one we'd both designed. And in the corner of the board, a caption I wrote myself in bold red font. "Reinvention starts with demolition." Mrs. Calhoun's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Calhoun turned to me. "Son, is this?" I nodded. "We're showcasing everything this property's been through." They didn't ask any more questions. They kept walking. 11:23 a.m. By now, 5 more couples had entered. Each wandered room to room, drawn not to the marble countertops or the recessed lighting, but to the story unfolding across every wall. One man pulled out his phone and started recording. I didn't stop him. Each board told a part of the tale. In the dining room, appetites and affairs. Photos of half-eaten charcuterie boards. Her lipstick-stained wine glass next to his. A Zoom screenshot where she wore a silky black robe. In the background, the Ellis kitchen. Timestamped 1:12 p.m. on a weekday. In the hallway, blueprints for deception. Contractor invoices in her handwriting, signed off for work that was never completed, but always billed. Every name cross-checked. Each lie framed. People weren't just gossiping. They were documenting. 12:06 p.m. That's when she arrived. Claire stepped out of her SUV in a cream-colored wrap dress and heels too sharp for an under-construction site. She saw the number of cars lining the curb and her brows creased. She walked faster than usual. When she saw the open door and the crowd inside, she paused. I stood in the foyer, arms crossed, letting her eyes adjust to what she was walking into. She opened her mouth. "What is?" And then she saw the first board. She went pale. Someone bumped past her. Another guest snapped a picture. Claire didn't move. I stepped aside. "Welcome," I said. "I believe you know the space." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes flitted across the board, then to the living room, where someone was pointing at her lingerie in a photo. She turned to me, voice hoarse. "What did you do?" I tilted my head. "I just opened the doors. You filled the rooms." 12:20 p.m. She bolted for the hallway, straight to the bathroom. I followed. There were 5 people already crowding near the door, 1 filming, 2 whispering, another frozen in place as the bathroom mirror started to play. Claire reached for the handle, but the motion sensor triggered. "You're the only one who actually sees me. You're my real home." Her voice, raw, intimate, fragile. The crowd turned slowly toward her. No one spoke. Then someone asked quietly, "Is this a performance piece?" I smiled. "Something like that." Claire turned toward me, jaw clenched. "You have no idea what you've done." "Oh, I do," I said. "I just hope he does too." 12:45 p.m. Cue the real finale. A sleek black Range Rover pulled up. I knew the plates. Had looked them up through the investor documentation months ago. Brady, the man behind the shadow funds we used for flipping. Claire had always said he was just a silent partner. Said she'd met him through an escrow agent. That he preferred not to get involved directly. Turns out he'd been very involved. He stepped out, checking his watch, clearly expecting something else. He wore designer shoes. That same smug Wall Street jacket type who thought NDAs made them immune to consequences. Until he stepped into the house. Until he saw the first board. Until he saw Claire standing there, caught, red-faced, mascara running, staring at the walls like they were collapsing. "Why is my face on your wall?" he asked, stepping closer. Claire whispered something. He didn't respond. His eyes scanned the mirror screen. His jaw tensed. Then he turned to me. "You're the contractor?" I smiled. "No," I said. I'm the husband. Brady's eyes stayed locked on me. At first, his expression was all confusion, the kind that came from suddenly realizing the floor plan of your own fantasy was wrong. Then it shifted, from confusion to panic. A panic he tried to hide behind that smug Wall Street stillness. Too late. Everyone in the room had heard it. I'm the husband. I didn't say it loud. Didn't need to. It rang louder than anything the Bluetooth speaker could have played. Claire moved first. Brady, she said, her voice pitching up into its practiced, breathy charm. This isn't. He's making it sound like. Brady held up a hand. Quietly. Firmly. Eyes still on me. You're her husband? I nodded once. And you set this up? I nodded again. Every inch of it. He looked around the house. The boards. The screens. The whispers. The guests, nearly 25 now, slowly filtering through the living room, hallway, bathroom, and kitchen like it was an art gallery curated in betrayal. Brady's jaw clenched. Then something strange happened. He exhaled. Christ. He turned to Claire. You said your ex was toxic. That he tracked you. That he followed you here from Portland. My brow lifted. Claire's face drained of color. That's what you told him. I said, half smiling. Portland? You told him I was stalking you. I had to, she hissed, eyes wild now. You don't understand. If he knew I was married, he wouldn't have funded your little real estate dream. She looked down. Brady didn't. He looked betrayed, but not just by her. By himself. By the version of her he'd bought into. You let me fund your flips, you let me sleep in his houses, and you told me he was some crazy ex. He scoffed. Damn. Claire reached for him. Brady, please, this isn't what you think. I was protecting you. From what? She didn't answer. He didn't wait for one. He walked past her, past me, through the kitchen and out the back door. No theatrics. No yelling. Just a single man walking away from a very expensive mistake. Claire stood frozen, then spun on me, livid. You planned this entire thing just to humiliate me? In public. I stared at her, calm. You did that part on your own. She moved fast. To the living room. Started tearing photos off the walls, ripping them apart with shaking hands. You don't get to do this. This is slander. Defamation. You could be sued. Those are your texts, Claire. She froze. What? I stepped forward, pulled a manila envelope from my coat pocket, and let it fall on the kitchen island. She stared at it. Everything. Every message. Every voice memo. I made backups. Time-stamped. Metadata logged. 3 copies. One already emailed to your silent partner at his business address. The second to my lawyer. The third. I leaned in slightly. Well, that depends on how loud you want this to get. She shook her head, lips trembling. I'll destroy you for this. No, Claire, I said, stepping back. You did. I picked up a wine glass from the charcuterie board, the last one she had laid out before I arrived early. Held it between us. Your fingerprints. Your lipstick. Your lies. Then I crushed the stem in my fist and dropped it into the trash. By 1:30 p.m., the crowd had mostly dispersed. A few whispering neighbors, one blogger who said she was definitely doing a write-up, and 2 young agents who asked for my card just in case. Claire had retreated upstairs. I didn't follow. Didn't need to. I let her sit in the house she'd built, not the drywall and paint, but the one made of lies. Let her feel the walls closing in. The next morning, I called the listing service, canceled the open house on record, and updated the paperwork. Price drop, motivated seller. 5 days later, Claire moved back to her sister's house across town. Brady pulled out his funding. Quietly. Legally. Which left the Ellis Lane project in limbo, and me with 70% ownership, according to the deed Claire begged me to co-sign months ago. I listed it as is. Didn't fix a thing. Didn't need to. 1 week later, I hosted one final walkthrough. Not an open house, just a scheduled showing for a real investor. Cash buyer. Someone who didn't care about emotional residue, just square footage. As I waited in the kitchen, I stared at the hallway, where the last of the photo boards had hung. They were gone now, but their ghost remained. Claire texted me that night. You ruined everything. I stared at it for a long time, then typed. No, you just didn't read the fine print. Blocked her. That was that. But the twist? Not what you'd expect. Brady texted me a week later. Said he'd been cheated on before. That what Claire did brought up some old scars. He also said the way I exposed her, measured, public, permanent, had a certain efficiency. He asked if I'd ever considered offering reputation reversal consulting to others. Sounded like a joke. until he Venmo'd me $500 and said, just to say thanks, and call it a retainer, in case I ever need your help again. The Ellis Lane house sold 18 days later. Cash buyer. Didn't blink at the history, the gossip, or the jagged cracks behind the crown molding. Didn't care that it was once a theater for betrayal. In fact, they seemed amused by it. People remember drama, the buyers said, grinning as they signed the final doc. Drama raises visibility. Visibility sells. They weren't wrong. By the time I walked out of the closing office, the listing had trended in 3 local real estate Facebook groups, a TikTok story time, and, most ironically, Claire's own Instagram account, now rebranded as a private healing journey profile. The moment I hit the sidewalk outside, Brady called. I saw the closing notice. Quick and clean, I said. He chuckled. You should make it a brand. Open house, open secrets. People eat that stuff up. I'm not a reality show, Brady. No, he said. You're the director. There was a pause. I've been thinking, he continued, about what you said. About the fine print. About how many people lie through contracts, promises, pillow talk. He wasn't just rambling. He was recruiting. By the end of that week, Brady had forwarded me 3 referrals. 1. A startup founder whose girlfriend was siphoning funds into a crypto wallet she said didn't exist. 2. A father of 2 whose wife kept forgetting her work trips happened to overlap with her ex's conference calendar. 3. A real estate agent, a peer of Claire's, who suspected her partner had another client in their second condo. Each situation involved betrayal. Emotional, financial, logistical. But more than that, they all involve cover-ups. Camouflage. And if there's one thing you learn flipping houses, it's this. People love to paint over mold. I didn't jump in at first, but I did listen. The startup guy? I helped him trace Venmo aliases through a public JSON file. The husband with the conference issue? I built him a shared Google Calendar overlay to catch flight pattern overlaps. The real estate agent? I showed her how to track key fob entries on the shared lockbox database. Most agents forget logs everything. All discreet. All off the record. No invoices. Just curiosity. Just revenge design. It was Claire who gave it a name. Not on purpose. 2 weeks after the Ellis Lane deal closed, she sent me a voice memo, a mix of venom and whimpering, asking how I could turn our marriage into a marketing campaign. You're like a damn open house, she snapped. No privacy. No walls. Everyone walking through your mess like it's staged for sale. Click. That was it. I screenshotted the transcript, saved the phrase, and bought a domain the next morning. Echolistings.com. The concept? Simple. I'd help people flip their betrayal into closure, into clarity, into something clean. Because truth is like property. If you stage it right, it sells. Back in our old neighborhood, whispers still passed through the picket-fenced grapevine. The bathroom confession mirror became legend. The photo collage hallway, referenced on 3 different Reddit threads. Claire had been let go by her brokerage, not because of the affair, but because of reputation risk, which is corporate for. Too messy for open commissions. She tried pivoting into couples counseling, did a podcast interview, called herself a survivor of emotional entrapment. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. The truth had a louder voice. What I didn't expect was this. Brady wasn't done. Not with her. Not with me. 3 months post-fallout, he showed up in person. My new office, a modest upstairs co-working space 2 towns over, just above a niche coffee shop with good Wi-Fi and no small talk. He walked in wearing his signature muted gray suit, a slight smirk on his face, holding a slim manila folder. This, he said, is your next project. He slid the folder onto my desk. A photo spilled out. A woman, maybe early 30s, sitting at a restaurant patio. Stylish. Polished. Too poised to smile honestly. Brady tapped the corner. My ex-fiancée, he said. She cheated on me with a married executive. 5 years ago. Left me 6 weeks before the wedding. I frowned. You want revenge now? He smiled. No. I want closure. He leaned forward. And I want her husband to know who she really is. That night, I reopened Claire's old tablet. She had left it behind in the Ellis Lane kitchen during one of her last visits, probably thinking it was just a backup, not realizing it still had login access to her cloud files. It synced in silence. Photos, videos, messages, some irrelevant, some not. One folder, buried under Home Staging 2022, was labeled with Brady's ex's name. Apparently, Claire knew her too. I opened it, and the world unfolded again. Not just new names, new houses, new lies. Claire wasn't just cheating with Brady. She had a network. She had structure. And in some of those images, Brady's ex appeared, sometimes as a guest, sometimes as more. I looked up at the wall in my office, at the small brass sign I'd nailed beside the door. Echo listings. We don't renovate lies. We reveal the foundation. Brady was right. This wasn't about flipping houses anymore. This was demolition. The thing about demolitions? They don't start with explosions. They start with permits. Quietly approved. Strategically placed. Silent until the morning the walls fall. I spent the next 3 weeks reconstructing a digital timeline. Claire had a pattern. She always did. Even in betrayal, she followed structure. Like flipping houses, she had her blueprint. Charm the financier, seduce the silence, and always stay one county ahead of questions. Brady's ex, Celine, hadn't just cheated. She'd done it with full knowledge of Claire's marriage. They'd met during a real estate seminar on passive income. Bonded over lifestyle optimization. There were group texts, vacations, shared Airbnb passwords. One thread, buried deep in archived iCloud storage, showed the two of them laughing at a client who had discovered his wife's affair via Nest Cam footage. Claire had replied, "Dumb men never check the camera in the pantry." Celine had answered, "That's why I only cheat in properties with no inspection dates." Face-blowing a kiss. The investor, the man Claire had fooled into thinking she was single, had finally reached out. He'd seen the open house stunt, hadn't spoken to Claire since, but he had questions, and money, and access to development sites Claire had once promised would be just ours. I met him in a half-built condo. He leaned on an aluminum stud, sipping black coffee like it was whiskey. She said she was divorced, he muttered. Told me her ex was abusive. Made me feel like a rescue. She told me you were gay. I replied, flatly. He blinked, laughed once, then offered me her email backup drive. No strings, just disappointment. Brady's folder kept growing. Not just screenshots, phone records, DMs, Airbnb guest logs. A few were even signed under fake names, but the handwriting matched Claire's renovation invoices. One message from Celine made my stomach twist. We could make a business out of this. Love and listings, swipe right, stage left. Move in, move on. Profit. It was then I knew. I wasn't closing one house. I was closing an entire block. I called a friend of mine, a wedding videographer turned digital forensics editor. He owed me a favor from years back, when I helped him buy his first fixer-upper. You still know how to make things look convincing? I asked. He smirked over Zoom. Convincing enough to make a wife confess to a fake affair, he replied. Perfect. We built it together. A fake promo trailer for a reality show that didn't exist. Love and Listings, a docu-series exploring the glamorous and scandalous world of real estate romance. We spliced real footage from Claire's walkthroughs, clips of Celine from TikTok, Brady from an old pitch event, and layered in dramatic transitions, Instagram screenshots, and a slow-mo shot of the Ellis Lane front door slamming shut. Overlay text read. 2 women. 3 counties. Too many lies. We launched it as a leak. On purpose. Reddit. Nextdoor. YouTube Shorts. TikTok teasers. Each clip tagged with subtle metadata that led back to one of 3 locations. Claire's old listings. Celine's property group. Brady's canceled wedding venue. The response? Feral. Conspiracy threads. Side-by-side comparisons. One real estate gossip blog ran an article titled, "Are These Women Weaponizing Property to Cheat?" I watched the chaos unfold from my quiet co-working office, sipping boxed wine out of a coffee mug. A week later, Claire's face appeared in a viral meme captioned, "Realtor by day, wrecker by night." Claire texted me only once. "You're going to get sued." I replied with a single sentence. "You'll have to find a lawyer who wasn't in your group chat." She didn't respond. But Celine did. In person. She showed up unannounced, standing at the glass wall of my office, holding her phone like it was a loaded weapon. I buzzed her in. She sat down, crossed her legs, and said, "You think you've won something here?" "No," I said. "I think I've stopped something." She laughed, dry, bitter. "Claire was sloppy," she said. "But I was smart." I pulled a printed email from my drawer and slid it across the desk. It was a PayPal invoice. One she'd sent Claire for staging services, but the transaction notes read, "Guest list access, plus code changes. She stared at it. You used me, I said. Used my properties, my trust, my name. I used an opportunity, she snapped. You just didn't know how to protect it. I leaned forward, calmly. I do now. Brady joined me that afternoon. Together, we uploaded everything we had into a drive. Texts, receipts, recordings, PayPal trails, Airbnb confirmations, with dates, faces, and signatures. Then we sent it to two parties. A journalist working on a story about fraud and short-term rentals. Celine's new fiancé. Echo listings became more than a slogan. It became a movement. Every month, I hosted a private group, clients who needed help staging their exits, not their homes. Cheated on, gaslit, lied to. They didn't want revenge. They wanted clarity. They wanted to walk through the wreckage and know, I wasn't crazy. I just wasn't the one lying. Claire's name faded. Celine went dark on socials. Brady moved 2 states away and now runs Renovate and Recover, a therapy-forward real estate podcast. Episode 1. Flip the script. When love is the scam. And me? I bought a house. Just one. No flips. No showings. No hidden walls. I planted mint in the garden. Hung my own photos. Real ones. No edits. But just in case. Every bathroom mirror. Still wired for sound. The end. Subscribe to the channel